So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us in this beautiful day in Madeira. Slightly too hot, perhaps, in Lisbon. And I'm Zev Fisher. I'm the founder of Fresh Portugal. With me today, Manuela Sena, who heads our immigration department, and Luis Costa, who is a senior tax and corporate lawyer. He heads our corporate department and is also the only person between the three of us who lived in Portugal all his life, so can offer some insights on the history of last-minute panic driving changes. And we will get started with this subject now. There's a point on why are they doing this, and for me, it's why are they doing it now when I'm trying to enjoy a holiday, but yeah, that is. I'm going to click start to start the presentation. If you have questions, click start. Hopefully you should see it now. If you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. We'll come to questions. So once again, this is about the proposed immigration reform, and perhaps the big question, or one big question, is not as much about what's changing or how are the rules. There's a lot of emotion that we've seen in the last couple of days of people expressing stress, frustration, fear, disappointment. These are and it's completely understandable. I mean, it's moving to different countries and creating a life is something that's deeply emotional in addition to being rational. And one thing we sort of question that we will try to answer today is Portugal stopping being this welcoming, friendly, nice place, and is shutting the door on immigration, and perhaps the sentiment is just as important, if not even more important, than the actual substance. And we'll try and explain where the Portuguese government is coming from and what exactly are they trying to do. But before that, quick agenda of what we're going to cover today. So I think most of you know us, but for those of you who don't, very quick intro to who Fresh Portugal are. Why is this happening is going to take a good part of our discussion. What is the government trying to do? Why is it doing it? And then Manuela will cover the actual proposed changes. What are they proposing? And it's a proposal, not finally approved in any means at all. But what is the proposed change? Then we will touch on a few types of people that are making up the majority of our clients. So golden visa, D7, D8 people. What does that mean to them? We'll sort of a theme that we will cover throughout is should you panic, but we'll also touch on it separately. And then should you rush if there's something that needs to be rushed. If you've been in our webinars before, you know that we try and make them attractive at the end by having a specific fresh offer. So there's going to be one in this case as well. And then we're going to go to questions. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few of them. This is a big change. So we have lots of people today. We expect big questions. It's also going to take a little bit longer than it usually does, and that's okay. So quick intro to Fresh Portugal. So we are now the largest expat-focused legal consultancy in Portugal. There's 13 full-time lawyers in the team, qualified in 5 different jurisdictions. All we do is advise expats on making Portugal a home. We have tax, immigration, real estate, estate planning departments, and we advise a very large number of expats that are moving to Portugal with a sole mission, which is to make it feel like home, to make it more welcoming, to make it safer, to make it smoother to come here. So obviously we don't like big changes either, but we also have a bit of perspective. So perhaps getting started with, okay, why is this sudden move, or why is this sudden change? Why is it happening? And before I turn to Luis to say a few words about the politics, maybe Manuela can say a word on kind of the type of visas that have likely triggered this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Manuela, to you, and then to Luis.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And well, Zev, answering your question, from an immigration perspective, I believe the crisis started with the large influx of manifestations of interest and CPLP being submitted. Unfortunately, not all of those requests were done in good faith. And I think this is where the immigration crisis here in Portugal started, right?
Yes.
For those who don't know what it is, that's for a good reason. There are routes to immigrating to Portugal that involve coming to Portugal without a job, and then finding a job and applying to regularize the situation. And this has been the vast majority of pending cases at the immigration authorities that are also stuck in everything else, has been these type of cases, which I believe are very rare amongst our clients, but that is what caused the crisis in the first place. And Luis, what is going on?
Look, what's going on is, as I told you a few days ago, that for a Portuguese all-time, all-life resident, this is just Tuesday. So what's happening now is just flavor of the week, and this particular Tuesday is a Tuesday after Election Sunday. So we saw what happened in the election. We have a new party on the block. It's making the rounds. It's making waves. It's now the second largest political force in Portugal. Third one by votes, but just for 50K votes. So very small margin. And one of their politics, this party is what you would typically describe as far right. One of the politics, obviously, is the easiest target ever, migrants. The government is just trying to appease what they think voters are. Now, is this a firm stance of Portugal against migrants as a whole? No, it isn't. I mean, all of you have seen that in the past few years, the country has been welcoming, and I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about the people, the ones you interact with, your neighbors, your friends, the people you meet when you come to Portugal. So this is happening as a reaction to election, to an election that had an unexpected result, or maybe a foreseeable but unexpected result. So should you think that the government is actually going to be as extreme in these measures as they propose? I don't think so. It's very usual for this to happen. So the government acts in a reactive manner. They try to anchor things by proposing something that is very, very far-fetched. But then, obviously, when you do something like this, inevitably, you're going to make mistakes, and everybody knows that this is not what they're trying to do. So they're actually trying to target a very specific group of migrants, those that used to come with manifestations of interest. So you basically had a tourist visa, overstayed your welcome, but you could stay here. The problem is that when, as I said, when you do stuff like this, everybody's caught in the crossfire. So they're targeting the type of immigration that they're actually trying to incentivize. So I really think that this is just a flavor of the week. And so all it does in the end is create bad reputation for Portugal for instability and not being a predictable country. But I don't think it is as critical as it looks.
Great. So it's a very good start. So really, it's for people coming with a proper visa. This has never been the intention. And just 2 weeks ago, the government was saying how they intend to make the golden visa program more attractive.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and speaking of the golden visas, 2 years ago, we saw the government saying we're going to shut it down, and that was because sound bites started happening or started appearing, people saying, well, the golden visa are the main offenders in the hike in housing costs. Well, they weren't. Housing costs went up all across Europe, and not all Europe has golden visa programs. So what ended up happening was that the government actually just fine-tuned the program. They didn't end it. And so this is what we're going to see. We're going to see some fine-tuning to immigration legislation. I don't really think we're going to see anything very, very extreme.
Yeah. And at the time, 2 years ago, it was also released a proposal to completely end, right, the golden visa. Yes. And in the end, this didn't happen. So,
So perhaps we could, before we keep talking about what's the likelihood of things happening, Manuela can touch on the actual changes that are being proposed, with this, again, an emphasis on the word proposal, and then we can touch on the aspect of retroactivity and grandfathering and what we think is going to happen. But first, Manuela, can you tell us what is being proposed? It's nationality proposals first, and then residency.
Yes, Zev. So the following key measures were announced. In the nationality law, the increased residence period for naturalization, 10 years for most applicants, 7 years for nationals of Portuguese-speaking countries, and it starts to count from the moment that you receive your residence permit. Stricter eligibility requirements, so applicants must demonstrate knowledge of the Portuguese language, culture, political system, and democratic values. Children of foreign nationals, nationality only granted if at least one parent held residency in the country for 3 years instead of 1 year. Heritage-based nationality, limited to great-grandchildren who can prove effective ties to the country. Sephardic Jewish path, revoked. The loss of Portuguese nationality is possible for dual nationals who acquired Portuguese nationality by naturalization 10 years ago or have been convicted for a serious crime. Another relevant change that everyone is discussing is the family reunification, the proposed restrictions. The restricted to minor children only, and only when the resident, the main applicant, has a residence permit for at least 2 years in Portugal. I honestly don't think this is going to pass. Integration requirements. Applicants must meet integration criteria, including language proficiency and civic knowledge. The exceptions: EU blue card holders, golden visa holders, and highly qualified professionals.
That's for family reunification, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so yeah, so these are the proposed measures. There is we added a column that you can see of likelihood of grandfathering. So maybe we can speak a little bit about the concept of grandfathering and how it ties into retroactivity. But I think it starts with, Luis, what you said before we talk about anything legal. Just common sense and how things have been in the past. The government is proposing things and then it starts walking them back. And we've just seen it with NHR 2 years ago that it was proposed without any grandfathering, and grandfathering happened as it went along, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, when you look at some of these measures, as Manuela just said, family reunification being revoked, it's just too harsh of a measure. So I don't even think that the government's actually targeting family reunification. It's just they want to show something for it, and so this got included in the package. Now, as I said, there are some issues here of both retroactivity of the law, and so I really do think that there's a high likelihood that a lot, if not all of these measures are grandfathered in. And there's also an issue of potential discrimination. So, as Manuela pointed out, the government is proposing that eligibility for nationality is going to be different for people from Portuguese-speaking countries and other countries. Now, this also targets people from the European Union. This is absolutely prohibited under European law. You cannot discriminate based on nationality. So, there you go. The first issue with this law is there, or this law proposal. The other thing to take into account is that this is just the very, very beginning of the legislative process. Okay, so as I said, this is an anchor. You can also sort of see the similarities between this proposal and the proposal presented by the third political force, second political force in Portugal. They're very, very similar. So I think that in the end, not only for legal issues, but also for reputational issues, a lot of these measures are going to be watered down. all you can expect probably in the end is maybe a bit more of a procedure, a lot of things not being as automatic as they were supposed to be. But I do think that, you know, the government is going to look at reality, is going to listen to lobby groups, is going to listen to people, and these measures are not gonna last as they are now.
It's an interesting concept. So we know that retroactivity could be a breach of a constitutional principle. You mentioned potentially using EU law in certain contexts, there's also the concept of protecting the legitimate expectations, which is the language that the government used for NHR, and is quasi retroactivity type arguments. It's not exactly the same as a retroactive measure, particularly on citizenship versus residency. So a lot of people have been arguing when you came to the country, you were granted residency, and the citizenship is a separate process. It's in a separate law. It's not guaranteed. We even argued about this at the office, particularly Manuela and I. And then there is a school of thought that the citizenship, the access to citizenship, is a part of the package, at least in an implied manner, and people have certain expectations when they start the process, and these expectations need to be protected. So even if it doesn't rise to the level of retroactivity, then perhaps the legitimate expectations need to be protected, and we have seen the government doing it in the past. So again, they say there will be no retroactivity because they don't want to attract a lot of applications, and in the end, we end up with grandfathering of everyone who's applied. So very likely going to be the case again, right?
Yes. With the NHR, this happened. With the golden visa, when they changed the real estate investments, they ended the real estate investments. It also happened. So I agree with you, Zev.
Let me point out that obviously, Zev, as you mentioned, having a visa in Portugal and being eligible for citizenship are obviously two different separate legal regimes, different laws. But at the same time, there is an interconnection between the two, because you need to have legal residency for a number of years to get citizenship, right? And so if you're changing the rules in the middle of the game for nationality, you're actually frustrating legitimate interests. So on the nationality front, on the citizenship front, I would say that probably the frustration of legitimate and legally protected legitimate interests is probably the biggest issue with this law. Mm-hmm. But there's still a way out, right, Manuela? Because you can still get your permanent residency card after 5 years.
Yes, this remains unchanged. And this is not only for golden visa, this is for all residents, every type of visa, the 78 golden visa. At the end of 5 years, you can still apply for permanent residency, okay? And now specifically for golden visa holders, this means that once you apply for permanent residency, you wouldn't have the mandatory obligation to keep your investment. So for golden visa applicants, even if the worst case scenario happens, you must know that you have this option. Apply for permanent residency. Doesn't have to maintain your investment, and then permanent residency is a residence permit valid for 5 years, and the applicant would need to wait more 5 years until they could apply for citizenship. But we're talking about the worst case scenario, right?
And there's only 3 differences that you should be aware of between a passport and a residency card. The first one is you cannot vote. The second one is if you get kidnapped, the government is not going to help you out. The third one is you have a line at the airport. I mean, all things considered, it's not that bad. Yeah. And if you're American, you're better off with your own government going to save you rather than the Portuguese one, because
true.
Yeah.
Maybe, probably, yeah. So it's I mean, we don't know whether it would be possible for the government to exclude. I think if the government could, they probably would have excluded certain type of migrants from that, or a certain type of visa holders, because a lot of golden visa holders are not migrants. They probably would have excluded them, but they probably can't, because it'll be too difficult. So they're going to try and see how they can walk it back, and maybe making permanent residence very easy, or doing something on the fees, or maybe something like that would be the solution. But I know that the full exclusion is also being discussed and considered, but I doubt if it can happen. But at least on grandfathering, we're very optimistic. But we're just going to have to wait and see. I think almost the same comments on D7 and D8. Perhaps D7 and D8 people with passive income or with income from overseas, remote workers, don't have the same quality of lobby as the small but very powerful group of golden visa applicants that have all the fund managers and lawyers panicking on their behalf now. But the government has constantly been saying how much they want to bring experienced and high-skilled migrants into, and so it's very unlikely that this is intended at them. And again, we think that the government made this big announcement, and everyone is screaming at them. They're going to start and see what can they do to walk it back as much as possible. And any comments on that, guys?
Well, from my part, and this is more from a sort of a strategic perspective, D8 and D7 visa holders are actually, the people that are not, your typical golden visa, 500K for an investment type. But they're like, somewhere between the golden visa and the sort of low-skilled workers that used to come under manifestation of interest. And these are the people that the government wants to bring in, integrate them, because they bring new opportunities, new ways of looking at life. Digital nomads, for instance, may create opportunities for people in Portugal. D7 holders, a lot of them are entrepreneurs that come to Portugal and they want to start building companies, they want to start building products. And so in the end, the government is really not trying to target this group of people. Actually, they really want to incentivize this type of immigration. And so I really do think that for D7 and D8 visas, we're going to see an ease of these rules, and maybe a bit more procedure, as I said. But this is a type of immigration that the government wants to motivate, because, if you look at it, then you have neighbors from America or France or Brazil, for instance, and your kids can be bilingual without going to private schools. So, it's all an added value to the country, and the government is very much focused on that. But again, the problem with umbrella rules that are anchored in reactive measures.
So, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but I remember what I wanted to say. So one thing we already saw, even in the proposed legislation, that they're offering to exempt people with high-skilled migrants from the family reunification rules, but they're not telling us who high-skilled migrants are. Yeah. They're saying, well, we'll figure that out at a later point, which, again, reflections back to what happened with NHR and IFISI, where they say, oh, we're going to give some tax benefits, but we're not going to tell you to whom exactly. And then that follows. But it's fairly certain that anyone involved in sort of the tech industry, the startup industry, people that we are helping in a different context, is going to be exempt from at least some of that stuff. Agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah, if you're panicking right now, just think of it this way. This is the way of the government to leave the door open to approve. If they did approve these measures as they are, with the exception for later to be defined high-skilled workers, they still have a way out. And so, this just goes to show that the legislation is not aimed at being this extreme. This is just the first round. We'll have to wait and see, but we're pretty confident that it's not going to stay like this.
So D7's D8 done. Should you panic with your big black screen? Hopefully we've convinced everyone that it's not yet time to panic. Probably not. So I think we've mentioned a few things here. Maybe it's time to kind of go back to list them again. One is that historically the government's been doing that, making big announcements and then quietly walking them back. And another one is a lot of these changes are proposed retroactively, which is most likely unconstitutional, at least part of it. And if it doesn't meet the criteria of retroactivity, it frustrates legitimate expectations, which is another legal ground. So what we've seen in the past, and we're likely going to see again, is sort of political pushing and lobbying, and perhaps the president will say, I'm not accepting the law unless you change this and that, or perhaps I'm going to refer to the constitutional court unless you soften it, and we'll see some back and forth on this until it becomes more digestible. So yeah, certainly not a time to panic yet. And for those, even in the worst case scenario, if everything passes exactly as it is, there's still the route to permanent residency, at least as far as nationality is concerned. And I think none of us believes that family reunification changes will go ahead without grandfathering, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and even from a context perspective, just to finish on the should you panic note, mind you that the government can approve a law, or this law, with the support of the center left, who, by the way, was also mentioning that immigration was an issue during the campaign. So, they can still save face saying, well, we've reached a different type of agreement, which is still going to be approved, and everybody's going to be happy.
Moving from panic to rush. So should you rush if you're planning to either apply for citizenship or apply for visas to move to Portugal, then should you rush? And yeah, you definitely should. And the reason is that, again, the government is saying we're going to make this retroactive, and they're even saying specifically for the reasons trying to prevent a flood of applications, which is what happened in the past. But what also happened in the past is that every time they've said that on something that matters, they ended up grandfathering. So if you're thinking of that, you want the opportunity to apply for citizenship in 5 years, you're considering a visa, you're considering a golden, you want to bring in your family after a year or so, and you're considering whether to apply for a visa now. We can't tell you for sure that the government will completely fail passing this proposal as it is. We can tell you that this is our best professional assessment. What we can tell you for sure is that if you wait until everything passes, wait and see, and all of these measures have now passed and now you're considering applying, then you definitely do not have legitimate expectations and you will be subject to the new rules. So generally the right thing to do every time you're considering a move, if you're going to do it anyway, you better do it as early as possible. Yeah. If you're not going to do it, then just don't do it, which is the next slide. And this Manuela was telling me that the slide was a bit harsh, and I was telling her this is why I put a nice picture on the right of it. So Portugal's beautiful, but it is what it is. It's a South European country. With a somewhat chaotic and somewhat unpredictable system. There's a lot of charm in it because a lot of times it works in your favor. You can be nice to someone and they'll try and help you, which rarely happens in the bureaucracy of other countries, but it's also unpredictable. It announces things, it changes them every Tuesday, and it's just the way things are. So if you're going to come to Portugal anyway, yes, you should rush. But if these sort of changes make you panic and we haven't managed to calm you down, then yeah, maybe reconsider.